ISIS threatens to send 500,000 migrants to Europe as a psychological weapon, in chilling echo of Gaddafi's prophecy that the Mediterranean will become a sea of chaos. Ladies and gentlemen, today's video is of the utmost importance that we have a clear understanding of current global events. Now, Muammar Gaddafi warned about this. In 2011, after he had minted a gold currency to rival the US dollar, but before he was murdered without due process, Gaddafi warned that the violence and aggression that the US was creating in the Middle East would turn the Mediterranean Sea into a sea of chaos. Gaddafi, the ruthless dictator he was, has been vindicated, just as Saddam Hussein's warning about Iraq turned out to be true. These men are obviously not to be looked up to, but considering the alternative of a destabilized territory with fake Western pro-democracy governments, these dictators were the lesser of the evils. But now we have ISIS. With more of the Middle East secular dictators gone by request of Israel and the Mossad, with the exception of Syria and Iran, ISIS has come to fill the void. Backed and financed with American weapons and other under-the-table support, we don't need to remind you guys that ISIS is a creation of the West. They are the new Western boogeyman. Now, this recent refugee crisis is both a result of the US-NATO intervention in the Middle East, because you can't just bomb an entire region without expecting some refugees, but more importantly, it's a psychological weapon from ISIS. Back in February, the Daily Mail reported that ISIS threatened to flood Europe with 500,000 migrants from Libya. And remember, this is a psychological attack, so here's where things get interesting. With the corporate state media and politicians jumping on the idea that accepting refugees is the right humanitarian thing to do, being that we're in a psychological operation, our gut instincts should be telling us the opposite. Just like the establishment said ISIS is the worst terrorist organization on the planet and we need to do something about it, despite their creation coming from the US and Israeli intelligence, not to mention the sheer consequence of bombing Iraq and toppling a secular dictator that, despite his worst crimes, was able to stabilize the region and keep the crazy jihadists out. Despite the corporate state, media, and politicians lying to us about the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and how that would bring peace, and despite how they were also wrong about ISIS, well, this time we should listen to them, right? I mean, what else could happen? Well, just as the deep state carried out the 9/11 attacks, they have armed and financed ISIS so that, in the group's own words, they can send 500,000 refugees to Western countries. And not only that, but of these thousands and thousands of refugees, mostly men by the way, of all of these refugees, 4,000 of them are ISIS gunmen. As an operative working for ISIS told the UK's Express, just wait. Ladies and gentlemen, there is a false flag in the works here. The deep state has armed and financed the militant continuation of Al-Qaeda, and now they're using the Western media propaganda to smuggle ISIS operatives into Western countries, and not just European states, but Canada and the US as well. Even Vancouver's own mayor is calling on the federal government to make Vancouver a sanctuary for Syrian refugees, while at the same time he's just ignoring our own refugees, so to speak, in downtown East Hastings. So the goal is to just wait, and it's not just a few guys, but according to the ISIS operative who spoke exclusively to BuzzFeed, over 4,000 gunmen are ready. It's all part of a larger plot in their mind to establish a fifth caliphate. But for the power elite, it's to further the police state and control over every single individual. We're being attacked psychologically from all angles. Global warming, global terrorism, global financial crisis. We're at war, folks, and it's the elite versus us. Humanity is the enemy. But so far, the global war on terror has been mostly confined to the Middle East. Of course, there was 9/11 and 7/7, the Boston bombings, Charlie Hebdo, and even our own Ottawa false flag. But the threat of ISIS is still a mere media soundbite until 4,000 of them flood into Western nations under the guise of refugee status and they start killing citizens. The point is, these refugees, albeit innocent people I'm sure, are going to have ISIS operatives embedded in them. ISIS said that they are going to do this. This whole thing is a manufactured crisis. Nearly everyone lost every sense of rationality when a little boy washed up on the shore and the media circus started. And it's terrible and tragic. But how many African children die every day from malnourishment and preventable diseases? Nobody cares when it's on an infomercial on Saturday morning. However, the media spin machine has managed to really tug at the heartstrings of the masses with this one. The truth is, guys, it's the Western governments who have created chaos and destruction in the Middle East. They create refugees, create terrorists, have them flood into Western countries, and then wait for 4,000 of them or so to start committing acts of terror or retaliation in war. You know, it used to be called war. If you invaded a foreign country, killed their people, and then they shot back at you, it wasn't called terrorism, it was called war. So this is a massive psychological attack, folks, from both ISIS and their masters, the Western deep state. And mark my words, if we let 500,000 of these mostly men refugees into our countries, that ISIS operative will be proven right. Some of them are embedded ISIS operatives who are coming in with the goal of bringing chaos and destruction to Western cities. And of course, in Canada, with the election going on, we're not finding any credible solutions. The Conservatives want more war without realizing that invading the Middle East only goes to reinforce this sentiment that the West is some great Satan that must be destroyed. While on the other side, not only the Liberals, but also the NDP want us to accept the refugees with open arms and without question. What about instead of regarding each other as refugees, citizens, and immigrants, we respect our private property rights? In a free society, there is no immigration policy. There are no borders, just property lines. There are owners and guests, invitees and trespassers, not illegal immigrants and refugees. And what about a policy of non-intervention? If Canada hadn't joined the US in their destructive, murderous quest for global empire, perhaps Canadians wouldn't be on this hit list for ISIS. I mean, if Canadians weren't over there bombing Iraq and occupying Afghanistan, if Canadians refused to support the war propaganda or this silly notion that it's possible to support the troops without supporting the war, if Canada wasn't involved in any way whatsoever, ISIS would not be targeting us. It's that simple. This isn't terrorism, guys. This is just war. If you bomb the Middle East and create refugees, well, expect some of those refugees to be undercover militants. ISIS admitted that they're going to do this. And for governments and corporate state media to ignore that is just downright dangerous and treasonous. It's subversive propaganda that is targeting innocent people, and all major corporate state media and banker puppet politicians are in on it. When ISIS attacks, the blood's going to be on their hands. A false flag is in the works, folks, and you can bet that the response is not going to be pulling out of the Middle East. It'll be more war and more power to the state and less freedom to say the things that you just heard in this video. Thanks for watching. Click the like button if you found this info useful, and check the links in the description to find out how you can join us here as a PFT member. And stay tuned, guys, we've got more video reports coming soon to pressfortruth.ca.